They say animals can sense evil, that horses remember everything, that a dog knows a bad man before a human ever does. Cade Harlow didn't believe any of that until the morning of his execution, when his horse tried to kill the sheriff. Not a condemned murderer trying to escape, not a violent criminal lashing out. A horse attacking a lawman. And the reason why would unravel a 3-year-old lie, expose the real killer, and reveal something so twisted that even the hardest men in Red Mesa would lose sleep over it. If this story grabs you, hit that like button now, because what you're about to hear will stay with you long after it's over. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next incredible true tale from the Old West. 6 hours. That's all Cade Harlow had left to live. He sat on the edge of his wooden bench in the last cell of Red Mesa County Jail, hands resting on his knees, staring at nothing. 3 years he'd been here. 3 years of stone walls and iron bars and the slow tick of time running out. The man who'd walked into this jail had fire in his eyes and fight in his fists. The man sitting here now was something else, worn down, hollowed out, almost ready for what was coming. Almost. Deputy Marshal Frank Holloway walked down the corridor, his boots echoing on the stone floor. He stopped at Cade's cell, clipboard in hand. "Gotta ask you, Harlow, any last requests? Warden says you can have whatever's reasonable." Cade lifted his head slowly. His voice came out rough, like gravel under wagon wheels. "I want to see Dust, my horse." Holloway's hand froze on the clipboard. "Your horse?" "That's right." "Not a meal? Not whiskey? Not even a letter?" Cade shook his head. "Just Dust. 5 minutes. That's all." Holloway stared at him, trying to understand. Most condemned men wanted human comfort in their final hours, family if they had any, a preacher if they didn't, but a horse. "I'll talk to the warden," Holloway said finally, and walked away. In the warden's office, 3 men stood around a scarred wooden desk. Warden Theodore Gaines, silver-haired and tired-eyed, Deputy Marshal Holloway, and Sheriff Virgil Teague, the man who'd arrested Cade 3 years back. Teague was tall, lean, with cold blue eyes that never seemed to blink. "A horse," said Teague flatly. "Man's got 6 hours before he hangs, and he wants to pet a damn horse." "That's what he said," Holloway confirmed. Gaines drummed his fingers on the desk. "Where's the animal now?" "Miller's livery. Been there since the arrest. Old man Miller's kept him fed and exercised. Says the horse is still in prime condition." Teague shifted his weight. "Seems like a waste of time. Harlow's gonna hang whether he sees that horse or not." But Holloway spoke up. "Harlow's been quiet as a mouse for 3 years. No fights, no trouble. Never raised his voice. If all he wants is 5 minutes with his horse, maybe we give him that." Gaines was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Bring the horse. Tomorrow morning before dawn. Yard only. Armed guards. 5 minutes." Teague's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. What none of them knew was that those 5 minutes would change everything. The night crawled by like a wounded animal. Cade didn't sleep. He sat in the darkness, thinking about Dust. He'd raised that horse from a colt, trained him with patience instead of a whip, spent more nights under stars with Dust than in any bed. That horse knew his voice, his moods, his silences. When the law came for him that night 3 years ago, Dust had been tied outside his cabin. He remembered the sound of his horse's frantic whinny as they dragged him away in irons, the way Dust had pulled against the hitching post, trying to follow. Now, in his last hours, Cade didn't want forgiveness from strangers. He didn't want a preacher's empty promises. He just wanted to look into those dark eyes one more time, to let Dust know he hadn't been forgotten. Dawn came cold and gray. In the yard, guards took their positions. Holloway checked the ropes and chains. Teague stood near the gate, rifle in hand, his face unreadable. Then they heard it, the clip-clop of hooves on hard-packed dirt. Old man Miller appeared at the gate, leading a dappled gray quarter horse with a black mane and tail. Dusty's coat gleamed even in the dim morning light. His ears were forward, alert, scanning everything. "Brought him like you asked," Miller said to Holloway. "But I'm telling you, this horse ain't been right since they took Cade. Barely eats, won't let nobody ride him, just stands in his stall like he's waiting for something." Holloway took the lead rope. "We'll take good care of him." Miller looked at the gallows being assembled at the far end of the yard. His face went hard. "You're hanging an innocent man," he said quietly. "That's not for you to decide," Teague cut in. "Maybe not, but that horse knows. Animals know things we don't. You watch him." Miller turned and walked away, his shoulders slumped under some invisible weight. Inside the cell block, 2 guards came for Cade. They shackled his wrists loosely in front of him and led him down the corridor. His heart hammered against his ribs, his legs felt weak. But when they opened the door to the yard and he saw Dust standing there, everything else disappeared. The horse's head snapped up, ears shot forward like rifle barrels. Then his whole body went rigid. Holloway held the rope firm. "Easy now." But Dust had already spotted him. The horse let out a sharp, piercing whinny, high and urgent, a sound that said, "I know you. I've been waiting. Where have you been?" Cade's throat closed up. He tried to speak but couldn't. The warden gave a slight nod. Holloway loosened the rope. Dust surged forward. Cade dropped to his knees just as the horse reached him. Dust shoved his muzzle hard into Cade's chest, snorting, whinnying, his whole body trembling. Cade wrapped his shackled arms around the horse's neck, buried his face in the coarse mane, breathed in the scent, hay and leather and dust and home. For one perfect moment, the jail vanished, the gallows, the chains, the countdown, all of it gone, just a man and his horse, together again. Cade whispered into Dust's ear, "I'm sorry, boy, I'm so sorry." Dust stamped his hoof, tossing his head. Then he went still, standing guard. But then something changed. Dust's ears flicked back. His body went rigid as iron. A low guttural sound rumbled from deep in his chest, the kind of sound horses make when they sense a predator. Cade felt it through the horse's skin, the warning, the fear. Dust's head turned sharply to the left, eyes locked on a man standing 20 feet away, Sheriff Virgil Teague. The horse's lips pulled back, showing teeth. His nostrils flared wide. The rumble grew louder, more aggressive. Dust took a step toward Teague, ears pinned flat against his skull. Teague's hand moved toward his gun. "Control that animal." Cade placed a hand on Dust's neck. "Easy, easy, boy." But the horse didn't relax. His gaze stayed fixed on Teague. Every muscle was bunched, ready to charge. Holloway stepped forward, frowning. "What's got into him?"
Cade's mind raced. Dust didn't react this way to strangers. He was calm by nature, steady under pressure. But right now, he was acting like Teague was a rattlesnake coiled to strike. Teague backed up a step. His jaw was tight. His eyes wouldn't meet anyone's gaze. Cade studied him carefully. Teague had been the one to arrest him. Teague had testified at the trial. Teague had sworn under oath that Cade was guilty of murdering a man named Jack Brenner in cold blood over a land dispute. But Cade had always known something was wrong about that night. The pieces didn't fit. The timeline was off. And now, watching his horse react with pure animal terror toward the sheriff, a cold suspicion began to take root in his gut. "Why's your horse got a problem with me, Harlow?" Teague asked. His voice was sharp, defensive. Cade didn't answer. He kept his hand on Dust's neck, feeling the coiled tension beneath the hide. Holloway was watching too. His eyes narrowed. "Teague, were you at Harlow's place the night of the murder?" Teague's face hardened. "You know I was. I led the arrest." "I mean before that, before anyone called it in." Pause. Too long. "I was on patrol nearby when the call came through." Holloway glanced at Cade, then back at Teague. "Funny thing, your name's not in the initial report." Teague's hand tightened on his rifle. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm asking a question." The warden called down from the tower. "What's going on down there?" No one answered. Dust pawed the ground, still locked on Teague. His whole body was a weapon ready to strike. Cade's heart pounded. He didn't have much time, minutes maybe, but something was happening here, something bigger than a last goodbye. "Holloway," Cade said quietly. "Who found the body?" Holloway frowned. "Teague did, that's in the report." "And who was first inside my cabin?" Another pause. "Teague." Cade looked up at him. "My horse never forgets a man who's done him wrong. And right now, he's acting like Teague's the devil himself." Teague's face flushed red. "You trying to star something? You got 4 hours before you hang. Don't waste them on lies." But Holloway wasn't backing down. "Teague, I'm going to ask you one more time. Were you at Harlow's cabin before the arrest was called in?" Teague's eyes darted toward the gate. "I'm not answering any more questions without—" Dust lunged. The horse broke free from Cade's grip, charging straight at Teague with teeth bared and hooves striking air. Teague stumbled backward, dropping his rifle, throwing his arms up. Holloway grabbed Dust to rope, pulling hard. The horse reared, screaming, fighting the restraint. 2 more guards rushed forward, helping drag Dust back. "Get him out of here," the warden shouted. Teague scrambled to his feet, face white, breathing hard. For one split second, his eyes met Cade's, and Cade saw it clear as day. Guilt. Raw, undeniable guilt. "Take Cade back to his cell," the warden ordered. "Now." The guards hauled Cade to his feet, dragging him toward the door. He looked back once, seeing Dust still fighting the ropes, still trying to reach Teague. As they shoved him into the cell block, Cade's mind was racing. His horse knew something. Dust had been there that night, tied outside the cabin. Horses see everything, hear everything, remember everything. And if Dust was reacting this way to Teague, it meant one thing. Teague had been there, not as a lawman coming to help, as something else. The cell door slammed. Cade stood in the dim light, fists clenched. He had less than 4 hours before they came to hang him, but for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't thinking about dying. He was thinking about the truth. Back in the yard, Holloway was standing with his arms crossed, watching Teague dust himself off. The other guards had taken Dust back to Miller's stable, the horse still agitated, still fighting. "That was strange," Holloway said. Teague glared at him. "It's a damn horse. They spook." "Not like that. Not at a specific person. You're reading too much into it." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm starting to see what I missed 3 years ago." He pulled a folded paper from his vest pocket. "Got a wire last night from a drifter up in Copper Springs. Says he was passing through Red Mesa the night Jack Brenner died. Says he saw a man matching your description, leaving Harlow's cabin a full hour before anyone's alarm was raised." Teague's face went pale. "That's a lie." "Is it?" "Because I also went back through the evidence logs last night. That knife they found with Harlow's prints? It wasn't logged until 3 hours after the arrest. And the only person with access to the evidence room during that window was you." The silence stretched tight as a bowstring. Teague's hand moved toward his gun. Holloway was faster. His revolver cleared leather and aimed at Teague's chest in less than a heartbeat. "Don't," Holloway said quietly. Teague froze. The warden came down from the tower with 2 more guards. His face was grim as stone. "Sheriff Teague," Gaines said, "you're under arrest for suspicion of evidence tampering and obstruction of justice. Pending investigation, Cade Harlow's execution is stayed." Teague's mouth opened, but no words came out. Holloway gestured to the guards. "Take him." As they led Teague away, Holloway looked back at the empty yard. The gallows stood unused. The sun was climbing higher, warming the cold stone walls. He thought about the horse, about the way Dust had known, had remembered, had reacted with the kind of certainty only animals possess. Sometimes truth doesn't come from witnesses or confessions. Sometimes it comes from a creature who was there, who saw, who never forgets. In his cell, Cade sat with his head in his hands, listening to the commotion outside, raised voices, boots running, doors slamming.
Then footsteps approached. The lock turned. The door opened. Holloway stood there, his face unreadable. "Harlow, get up." Cade's stomach dropped. This was it. They were taking him early. But Holloway didn't lead him toward the gallows. He led him to the warden's office. Inside, Gaines sat behind his desk with paper spread in front of him. He looked up as Cade entered. "Sit down, Harlow." Cade sat, wrists still shackled, confusion written across his face. Gaines leaned forward. "We're reopening your case. As of this moment, your execution is delayed indefinitely." Cade stared at him. "What?" "We have new evidence. Evidence suggesting Sheriff Teague may have been involved in Jack Brenner's murder." Cade's breath caught. "Teague?" "We have a witness who places him at your cabin before the arrest was called in. We have irregularities in the evidence chain. And we have—" Gaines paused, almost smiling. "We have a horse who seems to think Teague is guilty of sin." Cade couldn't speak. His mind reeled. "You're not free yet," Gaines continued. "But you're not dying today. We're going to find out what really happened, and if Teague did what I think he did, you'll walk out of here a free man." Cade's hand shook. He pressed them flat against his knees. "What about Dust?" he asked. Holloway spoke from the doorway. "Miller's keeping him. Says you can have him back once this is sorted." Cade nodded slowly, still trying to process it all. "Take him back to his cell," Gaines said to Holloway. "But get those shackles off. He's not a condemned man anymore." As they walked back down the corridor, Cade felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. The investigation moved fast once it started. Holloway tracked down the drifter from Copper Springs, a weathered cowhand named Rufus Polk who'd been riding through Red Mesa that night. Polk testified he'd seen Teague leaving Harlow's cabin around 9 o'clock, carrying something wrapped in cloth. They brought in a handwriting expert who examined the evidence logs. The entries for the murder weapon were in a different hand than Teague's usual script. Someone had forged them. They re-examined the knife itself. The fingerprints were smudged, inconsistent, applied after the fact rather than during use. But the biggest break came from an unexpected source. Old man Miller showed up at the jail 3 days later, dusty from a long ride. He carried a worn leather saddlebag. "I found this in my barn," Miller told Holloway. "Been there since the night they brought Dust in. Must have fallen off during the arrest." Inside the saddlebag were papers, land deeds, contracts, all bearing signatures and dates.
Holloway spread them on the warden's desk. "These are property transfers. Jack Brenner was selling his land to outside investors, and every single deed has Teague's signature as witness and agent." Gaines studied the documents. Teague was buying up land cheap, using his badge to pressure folks. Brenner must have refused to sell, so Teague killed him and framed Harlow for it. "But why frame Harlow?" Holloway asked. Gaines picked up another paper, a survey map. "Look at this. Harlow's property sits right between Brenner's land and the new railroad line. If Teague controlled both properties, he'd control access to the entire valley, worth a fortune." Holloway's face darkened. "So he killed one man and tried to hang another, all for money." But there was more. When they arrested Teague and searched his house, they found something that made even hardened lawmen feel sick. A journal, hidden under the floorboards, written in Teague's own hand. The first entry was dated 6 months before Jack Brenner's murder. "Brenner won't sell. Neither will Harlow. Need to remove both obstacles. Make it look like they killed each other." The next entries detailed the plan, how Teague would kill Brenner, plant evidence on Harlow, testify as the arresting officer, watch Harlow hang. But the entries didn't stop there. They went back years. Other names, other deaths, other men who'd stood in Teague's way and mysteriously ended up dead or disappeared. 7 names in total. 7 murders spanning 5 years. And Teague had gotten away with all of them because he wore a badge, because people trusted him, because no one questioned the word of a lawman. Until a horse did. When the full truth came out, Red Mesa erupted. People who'd known Teague, trusted him, felt sick. Families of the 7 victims demanded justice. The territorial governor got involved. 2 weeks later, Cade stood in the same courtroom where he'd been sentenced to hang. But this time, Teague sat at the defense table, his face hollow, his hands clenched. The jury was out less than 30 minutes. Guilty. Guilty of 7 counts of murder. Guilty of evidence tampering. Guilty of conspiracy. Guilty of abuse of authority. The judge was an elderly man with iron gray hair and no mercy in his eyes. "Virgil Teague," he said, his voice cold as winter wind. "You wore a badge and swore an oath to protect the innocent. Instead, you became a predator. You murdered 7 men for profit. You framed an innocent rancher. You would have let him hang for your crimes." He banged his gavel once. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "I sentence you to death by hanging, and may whatever God you pray to have more mercy than you showed your victims." Teague's head dropped. He said nothing. The judge turned to Cade, sitting in the gallery with Holloway beside him. "Mr. Harlow, on behalf of this court and this territory, I offer our sincerest apologies. All charges against you are dismissed. You are a free man." Cade stood slowly. His legs felt weak. Free. After 3 years of waiting to die, he was free. The courtroom erupted in murmurs and whispers. Holloway clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on," he said. "Someone's waiting." They walked out into bright afternoon sunlight. The street bustled with people, horses, wagons, normal life continuing like nothing had happened. And there, tied to the hitching post, was Dust. The horse's head came up instantly. His ears shot forward. He whinnied loud and clear, pulling against the rope. Cade walked down the courthouse steps slowly. His hands shook as he untied the rope. Dust pressed his head hard into Cade's chest, just like he had done in the fire yard. But this time, there were no shackles, no guards, no gallows, just freedom. Cade wrapped his arms around the horse's neck, his eyes burning. "We made it, boy. We made it." Holloway stood nearby, watching. "Miller says he kept all your gear, knew you'd be back for it." Cade nodded, not trusting his voice. "Where will you go?" Holloway asked. Cade looked at the open sky, then at the road leading out of town. "Somewhere quiet, somewhere me and Dust can just be." Holloway extended his hand. "If you ever need anything, you know where to find me." Cade shook it. "Thank you for believing." "Wasn't me," Holloway said, glancing at Dust. "Was him." Cade climbed into the saddle, feeling the familiar creak of leather, the warmth of the horse beneath him. Dust shifted his weight, eager to move. They rode out of Red Mesa slowly. People stared as they passed, but Cade didn't care. He was alive. He was free. He had his horse back. The sun was setting when they reached the ridge overlooking the valley. Cade reined Dust to a stop and looked back at the town, at the jail where he'd spent 3 years waiting to die. He thought about that morning in the yard, about the moment Dust had recognized him, about the way the horse had reacted to Teague, setting everything in motion. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "You saved me when I'd given up on myself." Dust tossed his head, snorting. Cade smiled, the first real smile in 3 years. Then he turned the horse west, toward open country, toward whatever came next. 6 months later, Cade and Dust stood on a piece of land 40 miles west of Red Mesa, a small valley with a creek, sheltered by hills. His land, bought with settlement money from the territory. He'd built a cabin, a barn, started a small herd. It was quiet here, peaceful. One afternoon, Deputy Marshal Holloway rode out to visit. "Teague hanged 2 weeks ago," Holloway said, as they sat on the porch. Didn't say a word at the end, just stared straight ahead like he couldn't believe it was happening. Cade sipped his coffee. He'd made peace with it. Teague got what he deserved. "How you doing out here?" Holloway asked. "Good. Real good." Dust grazed nearby, coat sleek and healthy. "You ever think about what would have happened if they hadn't let you see him that morning?" Holloway asked. Cade looked at his horse. "Every day." Holloway nodded. "Folks in town still talk about it. The way he went after Teague, the way he knew. Some say it was instinct. Others say it was something more." Cade took another sip. "Doesn't matter what they call it. What matters is that he remembered. When everyone else gave up on me, when I'd almost given up on myself, he remembered who I was." Holloway stood, brushing dust from his pants. "I should get back, but if you ever need anything, I appreciate that." After Holloway left, Cade walked out to where Dust was grazing. He pulled an apple from his pocket, cut into quarters. Dust took one piece, gently, crunching with satisfaction. "You know," Cade said, rubbing the horse's neck, "they all say you saved my life, and you did. But it was more than that." Dust swung his head around, nudging Cade's shoulder. "You reminded me who I was when I'd forgotten. When I was ready to give up, you looked at me like I still mattered." He pressed his forehead against Dust's. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not forgetting." As darkness fell, Cade led Dust back to the barn. He brushed him down, checked his hoofs, filled his feed bucket. When he finished, Cade stood in the barn doorway, looking at the stars. He thought about all the men who'd been hanged over the years. How many were innocent? How many died because there was no one to speak for them? He'd been lucky, impossibly lucky. But it wasn't just luck, it was Dust. A horse who'd seen the truth when everyone else was blind.
That night, Cade sat by his fire and pulled out a journal. He began to write. Not for anyone else, just for himself. He wrote about Dust, about their bond, about that morning in the jail yard when everything changed. He wrote about Teague's crimes, the 7 murders, the corruption that had festered for years. And he wrote about this new life, the peace he'd found, the future ahead. When he finished, Cade closed the journal and climbed into bed. Outside, wind whispered through the pines. In the barn, Dust settled into his stall. And for the first time in 3 years, Cade Harlow slept without fear. He slept like a free man, because that's what he was, and he owed it all to a horse who'd refused to forget. The years rolled by quietly. Cade and Dust became known throughout the territory, not as the man who'd almost hanged and the horse who saved him, but as good neighbors, honest folk. Other ranchers would wave as they rode past. Cade would nod in return. He kept mostly to himself, valuing quiet things, sunrises, the sound of the creek, the way Dust's ears perked up at his voice. One evening, a young man rode up to the cabin, maybe 20 years old, with nervous eyes and dusty clothes. He dismounted carefully, hat in hands. "Mr. Harlow? That's me. My name's Daniel Hayes. I heard about what happened to you, about how your horse, how he knew." Cade studied him. "You in trouble, son?" Nodded. "My brother. He's in jail in Silver Rock. They say he killed a man in a fight, but he didn't. He was with me that night, miles away, but the sheriff won't listen. Says my brother's guilty." Cade's jaw tightened. "What's your brother's name?" "Miguel. Miguel Hayes." "And the sheriff?" "Wade Patterson." Cade thought for a moment. Patterson. He'd heard the name. A hard man, quick to judge. "I can't promise anything," Cade said, "but I'll ride over to Silver Rock, talk to some folks, see what I can learn." Daniel's face lit with hope. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet. I might not be able to help." But Cade knew he had to try. He remembered what it was like to be in that cell, waiting to die, knowing you were innocent but unable to prove it.
The next morning, Cade saddled Dust and rode east toward Silver Rock. The town was smaller than Red Mesa, rougher around the edges. Cade went straight to the jail. Sheriff Patterson was thick-built with cold eyes and a permanent scowl. He looked up when Cade entered. "Help you?" "Name's Cade Harlow. I'm here about Miguel Hayes." Patterson's scowl deepened. "You a lawyer?" "No, just someone who knows what it's like to be wrongly accused." "Hayes ain't wrongly accused. We got witnesses." "Witnesses who were drunk during a bar fight," Cade said. "I've read the reports. Your case is thin. Who the hell are you to tell me how to do my job?" Cade leaned on the desk. "I'm someone who spent 3 years on death row for a murder I didn't commit. Someone who'd have hanged if not for—" He paused. "If not for someone who saw the truth." Patterson stared at him. "You're that Harlow from Red Mesa?" "That's right." The sheriff's expression shifted slightly. Everyone had heard the story. "Look," Patterson said, less hostile now, "I got a dead man, and someone's got to answer for it. Hayes was there. He was fighting." "Then charge him with what he did, not what someone else did." Patterson rubbed his face. "There was another man, name's Carter Boyle. Left town right after the fight. I sent a deputy to find him, but he came back empty." "Where'd Boyle go?" "Mining camps up north, last anyone saw." Cade straightened. "Give me 2 weeks. I'll find him. And if you don't, then I'll come back and tell you myself that you probably got the right man. But if I do find him, you listen to what he says." Patterson studied Cade's face. Finally, he nodded. 2 weeks. That's all." Cade rode north that afternoon. The mining camps were brutal places. Finding one man would be near impossible. But Cade had learned patience in that cell. He'd learned to watch, to notice, to ask the right questions. And he had Dust. For a week, he moved from camp to camp. No one had seen Boyle. Then, in a played-out mine on the edge of nowhere, he found him. Carter Boyle was panning for gold scraps, his hands shaking, his eyes haunted. "Carter Boyle?" The man looked up. Fear crossed his face. He started to run. Cade whistled sharp. Dust moved instantly, cutting off the escape, herding Boyle back. "I'm not here to hurt you," Cade said. "I just want the truth." Boyle pressed against the rock, breathing hard. "I didn't mean to kill him. It was an accident. We were fighting and I pushed him and he fell and his head hit the bar and—" His voice broke. "I ran because I was scared." Cade stepped closer. "There's a man in jail right now about to hang for what you did." Boyle's face went white. "Miguel? They arrested Miguel?" "That's right. And if you don't come back with me, an innocent man dies." Boyle slid down the rock. "I can't. They'll hang me." "Maybe, maybe not. It was an accident during a fight, but Miguel's got no chance if you don't speak up." Cade crouched to Boyle's level. "I know what it's like to be in that cell waiting to die. I know the fear. You really want that on your conscience?" Boyle's hands covered his face. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then, finally, "All right, I'll go back. I'll tell them." They rode into Silver Rock 2 days later. The whole town stopped to stare. Sheriff Patterson stepped onto the boardwalk. "Boyle, where have you been?" "Hiding," he said quietly. "Ashamed." Inside the jail, Boyle confessed everything. Patterson listened, taking notes. When Boyle finished, Patterson looked at Cade. "You did good work, Harlow. Just doing what someone should have done for me 3 years ago." Patterson released Miguel that day. The young man stumbled out of his cell, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," Miguel said to Cade. "I don't know how—" "Live a good life," Cade said. "That's thanks enough." Cade rode back to his valley, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. He couldn't change what had happened to him, but he could help others avoid the same fate. Over the next months, word spread. When someone was wrongly accused, when justice seemed blind, people came to Cade Harlow. He didn't take every case, only the ones where he saw real innocence, real injustice, and slowly, quietly, he built a reputation.
the man who'd beaten death, the man who found truth. One evening as the sun set over his valley, Cade stood at the fence watching Dust graze. The horse had saved his life that morning in the jail yard, but he had done more than that. He'd reminded Cade that loyalty matters, that truth matters, that sometimes one voice, even an animal's voice, can change everything. Cade thought about Teague, rotting in the ground, about the 7 men who died for one man's greed, about the system that had nearly killed him. And he thought about all the others out there, the innocent ones sitting in cells, waiting, hoping, praying someone would believe them. He couldn't save them all, but he could save some. And that would have to be enough. As darkness fell, Cade walked back to the cabin. Inside, the fire crackled. He sat in his chair, journal open. He wrote about Miguel Hayes, about Carter Boyle, about the thin line between guilt and innocence, and how easily a man's life can be stolen by fear and assumptions. When he finished writing, Cade closed the journal and stared into the flames. Tomorrow would bring more work, fences to mend, horses to tend, maybe another rider seeking help. But tonight, he just sat there, grateful to be alive, grateful for a horse who had remembered when everyone else forgot, grateful for a second chance that so few ever received. Outside, Dust wandered close to the cabin, as he did every night, standing guard, always watching, never forgetting. And in that quiet valley, far from towns and their corruptions, 2 survivors of injustice found their peace. Not in vengeance, not in bitterness, but in the simple act of living, of helping, of being the voice for those who had none.
And whenever someone questioned whether a horse could really expose a killer, old-timers would shake their heads and say, "You weren't there. You didn't see the way that horse looked at Teague, like he was staring straight into hell itself." Because Dust had seen. That night 3 years ago, tied outside Cade's cabin, the horse had watched Teague arrive, had smelled the fear and violence on him, had seen him enter the cabin, had heard the sounds of struggle, the gunshot, the body falling. And when Teague emerged, dragging Cade out in irons, planting the murder weapon in his hand, Dust had known. The horse had stamped and whinnied and fought his rope, trying to stop what was happening. But no one listened to a horse. Until that morning in the jail yard, when Dust finally had a chance to tell his truth, not with words, but with teeth and hooves and primal fury, with the kind of certainty that cut through 3 years of lies in a single moment. That was the real miracle. Not that an animal had known. Animals always know. The miracle was that someone finally paid attention. Years later, when Cade was an old man and Dust had long since been laid to rest in a peaceful corner of the valley, people still came to hear the story, to ask how it had really happened, to understand how a horse had saved a man's life. And Cade would tell them the same thing every time. Dust didn't save me because he was special. He saved me because I listened. Because when he tried to tell me something, I paid attention. We spend so much time talking, we forget how to listen, especially to creatures who can't speak our language. He'd pause, looking out at the valley where he'd spent his best years. The truth is always there if you're willing to see it. Sometimes it comes from a witness, sometimes from evidence, and sometimes it comes from a horse who refuses to let evil walk free. That was the lesson of Cade Harlow and Dust. Not that animals are miraculous, but that we should trust them more, listen to them more, because they see the world without the filters we put on it, without prejudice or politics or personal gain. They just see what's there. And sometimes that simple truth is enough to save a life. The sun was setting over Red Mesa when Deputy Marshal Frank Holloway, now old and gray himself, sat on his porch thinking about that morning 20 years ago. The morning a horse went wild in the jail yard and changed everything. He thought about Teague, about the 7 murders, about how close they'd come to hanging an innocent man and letting a monster keep his badge. And he thought about Dust,
about the way that horse had known, had remembered, had refused to stay silent. Holloway had seen a lot of strange things in his years as a lawman, but nothing stranger, nothing more profound than watching an animal expose a killer that every human had trusted. It made him wonder how many other times animals had tried to warn them, how many times they'd ignored the signs because they thought animals couldn't possibly understand human evil. But they did understand, maybe better than humans did, because animals didn't make excuses, didn't rationalize, didn't look the other way when it was convenient. They just knew. And if you paid attention, they'd tell you. All you had to do was listen. Holloway smiled, thinking about Cade riding off into that sunset 20 years ago. Free at last, his horse beside him. Two souls who'd saved each other. That was the real story. Not just that a horse exposed a killer, but that a man had the wisdom to listen when his horse spoke, to trust what he saw in those animal eyes, to believe in a bond that transcended words. And because he listened, he lived. That was a lesson worth remembering. Holloway stood, his joints creaking, and walked inside. His granddaughter was visiting, a girl of 8 with curious eyes. "Tell me the story again, Grandpa, about the horse who saved the cowboy." Holloway sat down and smiled. "Well now, it all started on a cold morning in the jail yard." And as he told the tale once more, the lesson lived on, passed down through generations. A reminder that truth can come from anywhere, that loyalty has no bounds, and that sometimes the voiceless speak loudest of all. You just have to be willing to hear them. The story of Cade Harlow and Dust became more than just a tale told around campfires. It became a turning point in how the territory handled justice. Judges started questioning evidence more carefully. Sheriffs faced more scrutiny. And more than one innocent man was saved because someone remembered the lesson of the horse who knew. Animals became witnesses in ways they'd never been before. When a dog refused to enter a room, people paid attention. When a horse shied from a particular man, questions were asked. The natural instincts of creatures who'd always been dismissed as dumb animals suddenly carried weight. It didn't solve every problem. Injustice still happened. Innocent people still suffered. But the story of Dust reminded folks that truth has many voices, and the loudest voice isn't always the rightest one. Sometimes truth whispers. Sometimes it growls. Sometimes it comes from a creature with 4 legs and a memory that stretches back to a dark night when evil thought it could hide behind a badge. And that truth, once heard, can change everything. So if this story moved you, if it made you think about the animals in your life and what they might be trying to tell you, hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe so you never miss another incredible tale from the Old West. We'd love to hear from you too. Leave a comment telling us what you thought about Cade and Dust's story. Have you ever had an animal in your life that seemed to know things you didn't, that tried to warn you about something? Tell us about it in the comments below. And let us know where you're watching from. Are you listening while driving through mountains like Cade traveled? Sitting in your home far from the frontier? Wherever you are, we're grateful you joined us for this journey. Because stories like this, true stories about loyalty and justice and the bonds between humans and animals, they matter. They remind us that we're not as smart as we think we are, that wisdom comes in many forms, and that sometimes the greatest teachers have 4 legs and can't speak a word of English. Cade Harlow learned that lesson in the jail yard 20 years ago. And because he listened to his horse, because he trusted what Dust was trying to tell him, he got a second chance at life. Not everyone gets that chance, but everyone can learn the lesson. Listen, pay attention, trust the instincts of the creatures who share your life. Because they see things we miss, they know things we ignore, and sometimes, just sometimes, they can save your life. Just like Dust saved Cade. This is the story they tell in Red Mesa to this day. The story of the cowboy who was saved by his horse.
The story of truth emerging from the most unexpected source. The story of loyalty that transcended species and defeated evil. It's a true story, every word of it. And it's a reminder that miracles don't always look the way we expect them to. Sometimes they come on 4 legs, with a mane and tail, and a memory that refuses to forget. Sometimes, salvation wears a saddle. And sometimes, the best friend you'll ever have is the one who can't speak your language, but understands your heart better than anyone who can.
Thank you for listening to this incredible true story from the Old West. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from and what this story meant to you. Your next journey into the untamed frontier is waiting. Stay with us for more tales of courage, justice, and the unbreakable bonds that shape our lives. Until next time, remember what Cade Harlow learned in that jail yard. Sometimes the truth comes from the most unexpected voices, and the wisest choice you can make is to listen when those voices speak, even if they can't say a single word.